Hello and welcome to the United and Stormwind reviews of Paladin and Priest. First up is Bless the Goods, which is a typical card from recent expansions that basically discovers from 3 different pools. And it's basically just a tool if you don't know what's more to fit in your deck. The secret part, I don't think it's going to be very useful unless you discover Oh My Yog. The weapon, Paladin doesn't have very good weapons except for a jewel kit, which I'm gonna get to later, and the Divine Shield minion is good for the Divine Shield deck, but jewel kit is as well. So this card is not going to see much play, but I think it's just going to be a pretty good filler, so I'm gonna give this 2 stars. Prismatic Jewel Kit is an incredible card. You can buff your hand 3 times for 1 mana, which should be pretty decent. But you need to have a Divine Shield deck in order to do it, which means you're gonna have to trade. And that's probably what you want with Divine Shields, because you don't want to go face. So this card actively rewards you for the thing that you would be doing anyways. This means that it can be very powerful, and with some hand buff synergies that I'm gonna get to later, this card will be very good, and I'm gonna give this deck 4 stars in general, and this card gets 4 stars as well. City Tags is a nice control tool. That's about it. You can trade it away if your opponent doesn't play an aggro deck, but still you're gonna have to trade it away every time. So this card will not be used, I think, in Divine Shield Paladin because it's basically a spell, and you cannot get the Divine Shield from spells unless the mount, which I'm gonna get to later. And yeah, this card, I don't see a deck that will play it. I don't think Secret Paladin will play it because they just wanna kill the opponent, and I don't see any other Paladin deck working, but this could be setting up for a future control deck. So bear that in mind. If you remember, for example, Crystal Smith Kangor was setting up for a control OTK Shirvala deck. So I'm gonna give this 1 star right now, but its rating may change if the control deck comes next to suspension or the mini set. Noble Mount is a very good card in general, even without synergies, because giving a minion Divine Shield is generally considered around a half mana effect, let's say. Giving +1/+1 is, let's say, a 3/4 mana effect, and a 1/1 Divine Shield is most of the time worth 1 mana, which means this card gets around 2.25 value in mana, if you think about it. Maybe even more. And this card can really be used in almost any Paladin deck just because of the Divine Shield. The Divine Shield just negates all damage, which means it is good for trading, which means, for example, when you have a big taunt as a Secret Paladin, you can get rid of it without you losing your minions. And of course, for Divine Shield Paladin, you can give Divine Shield to a minion which hasn't attacked yet and can attack, which means you can give some buffs from Prismatic Jewel Kit or the Legendary. So this card, Alice Bannerman, is an insane card, and it's going to be one of the most powerful and most used cards, because it doesn't only tutor and draw you a minion, which is already, I think, a 1 mana effect by itself. It also gives minions in your hand +1/+1, which is another 1 mana effect. And if you think about it, if you buff 2 minions, it technically has 3 mana 4/4 draw a card, which is absolutely bonkers, insane. And this card will see play, I think, in every Paladin deck, and for that reason it gets 5 stars. Catacomb Guard is going to be a card that people are really gonna try to combo. Why? Because why not? Because if you can get like +20, it's 21 damage, and it's really possible you just have to pop 4 Divine Shields and get lucky. So, this card will be very useful. It's a good control tool, but it's also a good tempo tool because you get to deal damage right away, which this says Rush Divine Shield if you think about it. Catacomb Guard is a very good control tool as well as tempo tool because it destroys minions. Which means this will be used in Divine Shield Paladin with all the hand buffs and the legendary. This also makes way, I think, for a hand buff control Paladin maybe, which is again setting up for some future expansion. The lifesteal in this minion makes it very good against aggro decks if you hand buff it enough, which could be a problem when your only hand buffs are the legendary and the Alice Bannerman. But this card still gets 4 stars with the potential it has. Lightbringer's Hammer is a genuinely terrible card, because lifesteal, yeah, you can use it, but you can attack heroes, which means this card cannot be basically used in a phase deck, and it can only be used in a control deck. But the control deck doesn't exist, and if it exists, it's not gonna use this card, 1 star. First Blade Orin is an insane card if you get it for attack, because it can be basically a 3-5 Divine Shield Rush, which is already a very good value, but if you hand buff it, it's basically 4 mana for 6 Rush and Divine Shield, so it's basically 4 mana 3 for 6 deal 4 damage, which is to a minion, which is insane. This card will see play in the Divine Shield hand buff Paladin, and it gets 4 stars. Race to the Occasion is a quest line which shows why First Day of School was nerfed that much. It also was because it was way too powerful, but with this it would be absolutely unstoppable, because you can basically complete it with almost 2 First Day of Schools, and then you play one cost card and it's completed. Which is absolutely insane, because then you have a hero power of summon 2 3/3s for 2 mana, which is absolutely insane. This could also well work with Lothraxion and also the other Silverhand Recruit stuff. Give them Divine Shield, give them +1 attack, basically all the Divine Shield and Silverhand Recruit stuff. This card gets 3 stars because it will see some play, maybe even in Divine Shield Paladin with Lothraxion. We will see how that pans out. Yeah, that's about it. And here is one of my favorite cards of the expansion, High Alert for a Dragon. 6 mana, 5/5 Divine Shield. Okay stats, not like the best. It's probably a bad 5 mana minion. After a friendly minion loses Divine Shield, give a minion in your hand +5/5. You have to trigger it only once for it to be worth it. Don Hancho was a 6/5 for 7, and it only gave it once. Also, if you have Broom, this card immediately gives it. Without, you can basically get 7 mana, 5/5 and 1/1 with Rush, and one of them with Divine Shield, and you buff your hand by 5/5. 1 minion. That's what I think the Ancient Broomstick should get nerfed, because it just has so much utility. The problem is, how would you nerf it? Because the broom will now be used in almost every deck, and this deck will utilize it to its fullest, because also you have the mount, which can, when die, will not have anything, will just have Divine Shield, and if you give it Rush, you get another +5/+5. This card will be cornerstone and one of the best cards in Divine Shield Paladin, which means I'm gonna give it 4 stars because it's not gonna be one of the best. Shard of the Naru. Do you remember when Mass Dispel cost 4 mana? It did this effect and drew you a card. It costs 4 mana. This card costs 3 mana less and has a tradable keyword, which means that you can basically say if you're against a control deck, you can basically just trade it away because you're probably not gonna need it. This card is an absolute powerhouse. Will be one of the big counterers, for example, for Divine Shield Paladin, and for most other aggressive decks that involve some buffing of sorts, or some death rattles. We will see how this pans out, but this card will be essential for Priest's survivability. This card gets forced. This card is a shadow spell and is a pretty okay card because it's better than Discover Death Rattle minion. This card gets 3 stars. Shadowcloth Needle is a very interesting card. You can basically read it a delayed 3 damage to all enemies, which was a definite card for free. You also have to play shadow spells, which when you play Shadow Priest you're gonna play anyways. This card is pretty good, I must say, because of the damage to all enemies, which means you can easily clear most boards of aggro decks, which means this card gets 4 stars. Twilighted Scepter is a decent card. Nothing more, nothing less. It's basically a mana feeder penta, but it tutors, which is probably better. This card gets 3 stars. This card is basically a wish version of an auto card, because you had Inspire deal 4 damage to each hero. This card gets half that with a pretty similar hard condition. The problem is that card has Razok's Priest. This card doesn't have Raza Priest. And you have a limited supply unless you get an infinite loop with Palm Reading and Phone Maker and something like that. But this card will be used as a finisher, but the problem is that priests, yeah, they can heal, but still they cannot get enough health against an aggro deck, so this card will basically be kill yourself as well. Unlike Raza Priest, which can heal itself with Reno Jackson, after the Apotheosis nerf, they don't have that good of a Reno Jackson anymore. So this card gets Void Shard. Wow! Priest actually gets somewhat of a win condition that isn't kill your opponent by Alt Age, which is good. Let me say that. It is good that Priest just isn't boring as hell. But this card, will its use? Probably in Shadow Priest. Yeah, it's a shadow spell, it will see play in Shadow Priest. It's a decent card. It can go face, but I don't think Shadow Priest will be that good, so discard is you essentially get +4/+2 for Spikerid Steed for 1 more mana. But for Priest, which isn't really synonymous with buffs right now, except lifesteal buffs. And this is just too expensive for a buff. You can say Paladin could use this, but not Priest. Priest is just not an aggro deck most of the time. Or tempo deck for the matter, it's almost exclusively a control deck, and when it's anything else, it gets nerfed. And Shadow Priest won't be good enough, and Shadow Priest can't even run this. So this card has absolutely no use anywhere, but it's still very powerful. You want a Priest condition? You're gonna get a Priest win condition. And let's see Guidance, because you can literally destroy the enemy hero for 10 mana. But you have to play a perfect curve, which means you're probably going to die against almost any aggro deck if you don't have board clears. And that's that. You can discover this spell from Thrive in the Shadows, but you know, Call to Neophile exists. which is a card which will absolutely murder any chance of this working out. Because you need to have a perfect curve, then you need to draw 5 in the shadows before without using it, which probably are gonna use it as the 2-cost card to discover a 3 or 4-cost card. With discover palm reading or something like that. And you can destroy the enemy hero, but they can stall for many turns in a row, can stall basically infinitely. But I really want to see the animation. I hope it's insanely, like, it's similar to Highkeeper Ra or one of these insane combo cards. This card gets 3 stars because it's gonna see a lot of play. People are really gonna try to make this work. Archbishop Benedictus is a card that's setting up for later expansions because you need more shadow spells. With the amount of shadow spells we have, I don't think they are powerful enough to warrant Shadow Priest existing. Priest doesn't have that good of a minion pool except Sethek and maybe the discount Draenari Bloodweaver or however it's called. And I don't think this is worth it right now to basically sacrifice most of the cards in your deck for a shadow form. They definitely tried because they nerfed Renew and Apotheosis without nerfing Palm Reading and Raise Dead, which were shadow spells, but this still won't work. But it gets 3 stars because it's going to see an extreme amount of play. Those have been the ratings for Paladin and Priest. Rogue and Shaman are up next. I will see you guys next time. Bye bye.